Uh, Abbey Hall, thank you so much for sitting down and sharing your testimonial of working one-on-one together.
No worries.
Abby and I have been having a bit of a giggle getting into this testimonial. Just before we click record, we're just reflecting on the journey and how good it's been. And I mean, like, isn't the whole point of self-development so that we can laugh and have more fun in life every single day? You know, like that's what it's all about. So Abs, thank you so much for sitting down and sharing your genuine experience of working together. And the more laughs, the better, honestly, in my opinion. So, yeah, thank you so much for taking the time as well.
That is all good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so good to sit down. I was just saying a second ago, you have been such a superstar client. You have been willing, you've shown up, you've been so coachable, and you've taken advantage of our one-on-one space on the calls and the messenger coaching to its peak. You have been there and always wanted to do activities and dive in and not only just on an intellectual level, but an emotional level too, which I really want to showcase in our interview today so that people can know when they join a program how to get the most out of it, what really worked for you, and your insights and perspectives to coaching. But maybe before we dive into that, Abs, you can tell us a little bit more about what life was like before you decided to go ahead with one-on-one coaching.
Before I decided to go ahead, I was a few months into living in a new country and I was feeling a little bit sporadic. I was trying to find an escape from my present because I felt like I needed to be somewhere else and doing something different. And that's been a pattern my whole life where I've always been seeking for that external thing to light me up. And I got to a point where I didn't want to be avoidant anymore and I wanted to really ground myself and realize what is happening in the present. So, yeah, I had to make the decision that enough was enough and I'm not going to be avoidant. I'm just going to dive into my fears and my challenges and patterns and decide to change my story without having them so attached to me.
Mm. That's beautiful to hear and such a big like commitment to be like, okay, enough's enough. I wonder what that like last straw was for you that made you cross the line, so to speak, and be like, oh, all right, I'm doing this, I'm in. What motivated you to reach that point and sign up for one-on-one coaching?
I am a top tier romanticizer. I always romanticize the future and think of how good it could be. And I just had this thought of like, well, why can't it be that good now? Like, what is actually stopping me from having that reality now? And I was like, okay, I just have to create that because the more that I think about it in the future, the more that it's actually taking me away from how I already have that
Mm.
now or how I can create that
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I remember when we started working together, we dived straight into working on your vision and clarifying what is that romanticized vision of your life and how can we create it? And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what happened when you said to me, like, this is what I want. And then with your commitment and energetic declaration, how the universe moved you in a different direction.
hmm So I had been living in this really small town that was super slow and isolating, and it was super difficult for me to meet people and make connections, which is something that I really value. And I was thinking so often that I want to move somewhere else, but I never actually said it out loud. And then it was on our first call that I actually said out loud that I want to move somewhere that has like an abundance of community and I'm working at a resort and all of these things. And a week later, after I said that out loud, I had to get evacuated from the town I was living in because of wildfires, and I got moved out into the bush where I was camping for 10 days, and I had no idea where I was going to go next. And I stumbled across this job, and now I'm working at a resort and I'm surrounded by the most amazing community ever. And it's just insane because that was the first time that I actually spoke it out loud. And the universe actually sent me destruction to like get me out of there. And it was crazy how it all unfolded. And yeah, I knew that as soon as we got the alert that we had to get evacuated, I knew that this was a blessing and it wasn't actually something that was super disastrous on my personal level, because I was like, this is something that is actually going to provide me with so much more expansion and opportunity to go after what I want. And it was kind of like that push from the universe. It was like, okay,
Mm,
like if you say you want to do this, or this is your time to show us that you're going to do it.
absolutely. And I wonder, Abs, how was my support as your coach during that time helpful when you were going through those like big clarifications of your vision and declarations to the universe and God that this is what I want, and then being tested and then being pushed out of that town and into a new town? How was my support during that process helpful?
I think at the beginning, when you asked me what it was that I wanted, um, you really pushed me to think bigger and to kind of step into a more grounded place of worthiness of like, no, I actually deserve more and I'm capable of more. So I can think of receiving more into my field, because why wouldn't I? And I think that was really helpful at the beginning because it allowed me to actually visualize into existence what it is I wanted rather than just settling for what I had. And during the time of the evacuation and the fires and being out in the bush and not having a direction, like it was really stressful in the moment. And I can look back with all the hindsight and say that it was like a golden experience to where I am now. But in the moment, it was just treacherous.
Yeah.
And having the support, it was just kind of like this grounded space that I knew I could go to and I knew I would be listened to. And it was so nice in that period of time because you broke it down into really, really small steps. And it was that made such a difference because we were focusing on the things that I needed in the moment and just the really tiny steps that I could take to sort of get myself out of where I was. And that was super helpful because I feel like I was trying to think of the bigger picture, but you really try to focus on what we can do in that moment to come to a better situation.
Mm, yeah, that's such a good way of describing it, because the funny thing is we did focus on the big picture, then you got tested, then you got moved around with the wildfires, and then you were in this situation that was really stressful, but you had already shared with me your vision. So I knew, because I see this a lot in my coaching when people go through tests, we can't see the forest through the trees. Like we can't see that bird's eye view. And having myself and being on the same page as your coach, I know where you want to go, and I can help guide you through those tests with clarity around like each small step is for a reason, so that you can reach this vision and create it and do it with grace and with calm and with clarity and confidence. Hey.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm. Tell us a little bit more, Abs, whilst you were doing one-on-one coaching, what that experience was like. You were on weekly coaching calls or fortnightly coaching calls rather, and you would have messenger coaching there as well.
Yeah, it was really good because I it was kind of like once I invested in myself and I had all of this available to open up to me with the messenger coaching and the calls, it was kind of like, okay, now I'm really committing to myself because it's there. So every time something came up, I was like, okay, I'm exploring this. Like instead of avoiding it and pushing it down, I'm like, okay, I'm bringing this up. And even if it was like the tiniest thing that was a recurring pattern, I was like, this keeps coming up. And maybe it's something that I can't see for myself. So it was really good to kind of have that fresh lens and the second opinion and to really be spoken through what was coming up and trying to get to the root cause. And yeah, it was just a matter of saying to myself, okay, I'm just going to bring up everything that I feel like I need to share. And that's coming up because I'm committed to myself and I'm committed to going into the darker places of myself and showing them their own light. And it was really nice to have your support with that because you were able to sort of guide me without getting stuck or dwelling in the emotion or the situation that was coming up. You were really good at sort of pushing me to validate what was happening, but then also integrate it, which I think is kind of the fine line of doing healing work on our own and then also with another person.
Mm. Oh, I'm so proud of you. And it's a testament to your commitment because, yes, we would go to those darker places. We would go to those places where you would have maybe never told anyone before. And at the same time, we wouldn't dwell on them. We wouldn't let them define you. We would move forward towards your vision and who you choose to become. And the way I think about that, it's very similar to a gym, and I'm like a personal trainer. You're coming in, you want to grow. I bring the equipment. I can't lift the weights for you, you know. I'm bringing you the equipment and you're the one lifting the weights. That's why it's a testament to your growth, Abs, because you're over the past 3 months, you have been lifting the weights, you have been doing the inner work, and it shows.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely like I feel a massive shift and change in my perspective and the way that I view myself and the way that I'm connected to myself. Because at the beginning, there was this massive thing about feeling dissociated from myself. And now I feel like my connection to my body's language and my heart's intelligence is the strongest that it's ever been. And that was like um, just that shift in itself is something that is so invaluable.
That is so beautiful to hear, Abs. And for the people watching this, Abby and I are actually going to do a podcast on the By Design podcast. And I imagine what we're going to talk about is embodiment and the practical things that helped you, Abs, with listening to your body's language, getting in touch with your emotions, being willing to feel your emotions with support. Hey. And
Yeah.
I wonder, Abs, during those times of our coaching, what were practical self-help tools that you implemented that you would want to encourage other people to explore?
The things that helped me the most were all somatic because for me, it was the case of trying to stop intellectualizing my emotions and my experiences and actually sit and feel them. And I knew that somatics were so powerful because I've studied somatic work and body based healing, but subconsciously, I would always still try to intellectualize what was going on. And I was like, no, I'm so good at feeling my emotions because I know exactly where they're coming from and I know exactly the timeline of them. But that's actually just suppression because I'm not allowing my body to get to know the emotion. So instead, it was when sadness was coming up, instead of trying to make it alchemize into happiness, I would just try to sit with the sadness and not really go back into where it's coming from and just get to know what does sadness feel like? Where does it feel like in my body? And just let it naturally flow as emotions are meant to. and then implementing somatic practices like shaking and dancing and doing slower, more mindful movements to really get to know how my body moves, and cycle syncing as well to move with my changes of energy. All of these things that are just honoring my body and honoring where it holds on to things and letting the releasing process be a lot more nurturing. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you find my style of coaching helpful during that process? The way I'm sort of structured and I have our shared notes and our resources and I keep track of things in a very
Yeah.
Virgo way. Did you find that supported that healing process even with the somatic work that you were doing?
Yeah, it was so helpful to kind of look back at the summaries if we had a call and you would summarize them. It was like so funny every time I looked at the summaries. I was like, wow, like he really listens because it was like almost word for word what I was saying. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. So yeah, it was so nice looking back at the summaries and then having the journaling practices that you would give me as well, because they were so in alignment to everything we covered on the calls. So it was nice to kind of get my awareness to the things that I shared and then also journal about them and try to
Mm,
become more clear as to actually what was coming up. And it was also really good because, say, on Messenger coaching, if something was coming up and I wanted to intellectualize it, or I wanted to understand what it was, you would kind of not let me. You would be like, no, we're just going to feel this. Like, we're actually not diving into this now because you need to feel it first. And I was like, okay. There was some resistance at the start because I was like, no, I just want to know, like, why does this keep coming up? And you're like, nope, we're just feeling. So,
yeah,
yeah.
I remember really clearly one time I said on Messenger coaching, all right, let's tread lightly. And you're like, I want to stomp. Yeah, I was like, I know, right? We want those answers and we want a reason. And you were so coachable because you trusted me and you listened to me and you followed my guidance and the results are clear. Like, tell us a bit more about your emotions now and your embodiment and also the maybe fears and anxiety and dissociation that might come in still, but how you navigate that now, Abs.
Mhm. So at the beginning, I had a lot of fear of the mind in general. And I, my whole life, I have been really awake to the different layers of the mind and our connection to spirit. And I think over time, it became so all consuming where it just overwhelmed me how powerful the mind is and
Mm,
how multifaceted we are and how everything kind of comes from our subconscious beliefs and different aspects of the mind, and the mind's not always in the brain, and just all of these things was so overwhelming because I thought about them so much. I didn't actually let them embody. They were always up in my thoughts. So I felt so afraid of losing control of myself or losing control of my mind. And now it's actually crazy because those fears are non existent anymore. I feel the most connected that I ever have. And I feel like I am fluent in my body's language, which is something that I've been working towards for so long. And to be able to recognize the way that it communicates to me is just actually a blessing.
mm,
And I feel like my emotional intelligence is actually intelligent now because I know how to recognize emotions rather than just recall where this emotion started. I can feel the emotion now, which is really good. And yeah, I just feel like my default now, if something comes up, is to move it somatically rather than suppress it and fall into old habits. It's like, no, I'm here to just connect to the emotion and release it. And yeah, my nervous system really is feeling the difference.
Oh, that is just such a huge win and such a
Mhm.
celebration, just celebrating you in that, Abs. I just want to reach through Zoom right now and give you a big hug to just say how proud I am of you and how blessed I am to have been on this journey with you. And I'm so excited for our podcast because I know we'll talk more about this. But let's stay on track with the testimonial. I wonder, what am I like as a coach as well? What's been your experience with me as a coach, and how would you describe what I'm like sort of in the zone when we're on a call or when we're in messenger coaching?
I think for me, as a woman, it was really nice to have that masculine presence and to have that structured mindset, because it really allowed me to sort of be a bit more fluid and flow and really express because you held such a safe container, which was really important. And when we were on calls, you just came in with such a clear lens. It was just like you could see all the gaps where I couldn't, or you could see where things were impacting me that maybe I was getting a bit too caught up in. You kind of could map it out really clearly so that I could then see that clear as well. And you were always willing to listen to anything. And that was such a game changer because it was kind of like if I didn't know the answer to something or if I didn't know what actually was bothering me, I could speak and unravel it until I got to the root cause, and you would help me get there as well because you listened, you kind of bounced back ideas, and that was really supportive because it made me think of things that I probably wouldn't have thought about on my own.
Mm, yeah, with the journal prompts, with the questions,
Yeah.
with being on the same page, with having a structured guidance on our calls so that you're really walking away with something and things to work on during the week. Yeah, I'm hearing that,
Mhm.
and like I said, I'm bringing the tools, I'm bringing the exercises, I'm bringing the energy, and you are picking up what I'm putting down. So you can't grow without doing the work, and it's a testament to that, Abs. You've really done the work and it shows, and I'm so proud of you. I would love to ask as well, what's life like now? Where are you at in life, and how has coaching benefited that internally and externally? You mentioned you're feeling so good on the inside.
Mhm.
Tell us a bit more about life externally with what's happening for you.
Well, I'm about to come into winter and it'll be my first ever real winter, which I'm excited about. And I'll be working at a resort, which will be super fun. And I have heard from my friends that I have here that winter is a time that brings people together, which is just everything that I want. And yeah, it's really nice to be going into this with a much more grounded perspective and a better intuitive channel to sort of know how I can take
Mm,
care of myself when it gets darker outside or it starts to get colder. It's just I know that I can listen to my body and it will tell me what I need and I don't have to stress about not giving it what it needs. And I remember during our coaching, I also said that I wanted to host retreats, and I'm starting to host women's circles at the yoga studio in my town, which is really exciting because I have built so much more trust in my knowledge and my gifts, I guess, in what I want to share. So being able to take that step and actually initiate these things is amazing. And to have people really receive my energy as well is so good. And I've just been really guided by my intuition. And I think that is the biggest change, is that every day I wake up and I just am so connected to my needs energetically that that becomes my anchor and my guide for my day and then my life.
Mm, exactly. Oh, that's just to hear that out loud is just makes me so, so glad to hear and proud and happy because for so many people I work with and yourself when we first started, prioritizing our needs is so difficult because we often come from people pleasing tendencies. We come from fear of prioritizing our needs, setting boundaries, and doing things that genuinely make us happy, but sometimes don't always keep the peace, you know. So I'm so proud to hear that, Abs, and to know that your needs and waking up each day are guiding your experience, like you said, to build your life. I wonder as well, what would you say to someone that is thinking about doing one-on-one or group coaching with me?
I would first say that if they have the thought, then that means that they have to do it, because they wouldn't have the thought if it wasn't meant for them. That's the first thing I would say. And
Mm,
I would also just say to them that they're going to be supported in their decision and they're really going to receive, but they also have to be willing to give, and to give to the container, because that is going to directly give back to themselves.
mm, definitely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Just like how you really dive straight in when we first started one-on-one coaching to messenger coaching to the welcome pack to the journal prompts to scheduling our calls and making it a priority. All of those things contribute to getting the most out of the container, hey, because you're bringing to the table honesty, transparency, and willingness, which are all the cornerstones of authentic transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So beautiful, Abs. Thank you so much for sharing your testimonial. Is there anything else you want to share to the people listening now before we wrap up?
I have two quotes that have come into my life. One came into my life last year and one just recently, but they both are ones that I go back to. And one is that the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding, which I love that so much, because it's so true. We need to go into the parts of ourselves that make us a bit scared or are a bit resistant, because that's where our growth actually exists. And my second one is what you're not changing, you're choosing. And I think that is so powerful.
That is so much food for thought right there, just in those two quotes. Like I've got things personally rattling off in my head that I still
Mm-hmm.
know that I want to face and feel and free and work on. Like it's a lifelong journey, and I'm so, so blessed, like I've said, and I'll say it again. I'm so, so blessed, Abs, to have worked with you in one-on-one, and you've been an amazing client. And I just know that the power that you're going to take forth after our container is going to impact other people's lives in amazing ways through your presence, through your grace, and through your business. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. For the people watching the replay, feel free to send Ab some love over on our Instagram or like this video, drop a comment of your biggest takeaway. I'll put all those links in the show notes below. Abbey Hall, thank you so much for taking the time to share your experience today.
Thank you for having me.